could be talking to myself here, and that's okay. Finish my caffeination regime. Hey, Christopher. Oh, how are things going? Good to see you out there. I need to come to your neck of the woods someday. Hey, Tyler, how are you? It's letting a few people in. We'll give it just a moment. I'll be right. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay. Hey, Josh, how are you doing?
Morning. Doing well. How are you?
Good. We've already got several people in the chat from all over the world. We've got Italy, Cleveland, Ohio, Sweden, Nashville. All right, Evelina.
It's awesome to see. Thank you guys for joining.
To do a Tennessee meetup sometime. Josh really wanted to do this in person, and I did too. I've had some life Tetris happening.
Yeah, we're relatively close. Our offices are maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So
yeah, it's gonna happen. We're gonna do something live in person at some point here, but and maybe we'll have Evelina along as well if you're in the Nashville area or Tennessee area. Welcome everybody. So I'm just giving it just a few more moments to let everybody in. Make sure we get a chance to not start without anybody. Okay, this is a little bit different of a session than we've had in the past. So this is not necessarily as much of a webinar as we're going to kind of be recording a live podcast. And I'll mention this again as we when I hit the record button. But just a full disclosure. And so part of the reason I say this, those in the audience, have your questions, have additional questions, and feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm not going to be strict about that like we are sometimes with webinars. I'll pay attention to the chat. Hopefully Josh doesn't get distracted by the chat. Feel free to ignore the chat as much as you want. We will be sending the full recording and the presentation slides to the registrants after. So watch your inbox for that follow-up email. But like I said, I say slides just because that's ingrained in me to say that. We don't have slides this time, and that's by design. This is going to be more of a conversation, and really I pulled from the questions from the audience, kind of feeling out a new, I guess, topic for our repertoire. So if this is something that's interesting that we want to dive more deeply into with a full-on presentation, let us know.
All right. So you're saying I'm the guinea pig for the Screenlight idea we got going.
Something like that. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I spring things on Josh, and you're always such a good sport about it. So I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
All right. So I guess go ahead and time to get started. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Welcome to today's session. I'm going to introduce this a little bit differently. So for the full recording for when I go on, when we put this on our RSS feed to the Global Medical Device Podcast, this is where we're going to start. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast. My name is Etienne Nichols. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today with me to talk about investing and really what we're calling this topic inside the investor's mind, what VCs look for in MedTech and life sciences startups. We've invited Josh Eckelberry from Solas BioVentures. He's a principal there where he bridges clinical insights with business strategy to guide early stage medtech investments. He has a background in biochemistry, medical training, and an MBA in healthcare administration. He brings a 360-degree view to venture development, and he also serves on several boards, including IO Urology and Air Systems, and he's passionate about advancing technologies that drive meaningful change in patient care. Josh and I actually met in South Carolina at UC Bio, if I remember correctly, several years ago, and I've wanted to do something with him ever since, but so glad we're finally getting something done here. How are you doing today, Josh?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, and I know we wanted to do this in person, and we're going to do something in person at some point here, but thanks for your willingness to do it this way. This is great.
Of course. Looking forward to having you.
I'll throw one other thing out there. For those of you listening, this is while it's not in person, it is in front of a live virtual audience. We have so far a couple hundred register. Well, we've had 600 people register for this event, and we have about 150 in the audience as of right now. We have people, looks like from New York, Texas, North Carolina, Blantyre, Malawi, and South Africa. Roland, welcome. I actually spent 3 months there in 2016, so near and dear to my heart. But Spain, Italy, all over the world.
That is amazing. It's so cool to see.
Really exciting. Yeah, this is awesome. So Josh, well, let's go ahead and get into the conversation. We want to talk about venture capital and what people are really looking for when they're investing in medical device companies. But before we get into that, I'm curious, what led you to venture capital, and you focus on MedTech and life sciences. What drove you there?
Right. You kind of mentioned my background. Did undergrad biochem, went to medical school for about 2 years, and pivoted into business of healthcare. I really saw an opportunity to kind of make a bigger difference. So I was doing a rotation early in med school. We had this rural track program, and I can remember sitting across from this trucker with long hair and burly dude, and I was this young 20-something-year-old med student, and I was like, oh, your sugars are off the chart. You really have to change your lifestyle, And I didn't feel like I was getting through to him. And this was in the Appalachian region, and I felt like I was just a Band-Aid on a really deep wound. And so I thought, I want to go see what else I could do. And I actually first left medicine to try to pursue healthcare policy and management. And so I was just exploring sciences, world of medicine, how could I best help people? And then I ran into our managing director here in business school. His name was David Adair. He was also getting his MBA in healthcare administration, and we gravitated towards each other. And he introduced himself as a venture capitalist. And I basically said, what is that? I had, my own business ventures going on, but I really, fell in love with this industry, the ability to advocate, attract capital, and push as much as I can into innovations that are going to actually help people and get that across the finish line. No one might know exactly that Josh Eckelberry helped structure and fund the Series B for this company that got them to their FDA approval. But I'll know that technology on the market and all the technologies that we're investing in, advocating, and going into will just be able to affect millions, hundreds of millions of people in one fell swoop. And so I call that leverage change. I try to change that fulcrum of which not just one patient at a time, like I felt like in clinical medicine, but advocating and changing the lives of hundreds of people by getting these drugs and devices to market. So it really fit this personal thesis that I had to try to do the most good. And yeah, I've kept that as the center point for my career, and it's led me to some amazing things like venture.
That's pretty awesome. So at Greenlight Guru, which is where I currently work, our goal is to improve the quality of life. And I think the people in the audience who are listening to this, that's a lot of the reason we're in this industry. I mean, there's lots of reasons to be in medical devices, but the patient is really what sets this industry apart from so many other industries.
100%. It's not the easiest industry. You really have to have a passion. And when you have that passion, it makes it easier, right? Everyone's always, even from undergrad all the way up, it's like, oh, why are you studying these harder topics? It's because I enjoy it. It's what I like. It's not so hard to me when I find joy in reading and helping and advancing this stuff. So,
well, tell us about Solas BioVenture. What sets your investment approach apart? I mean, there's so many different, because when I think about investment, sometimes I think about, so let's say we're software as a medical device, and so it's pure software developers, and they may go straight to a fund that focuses primarily on B2B SaaS, but they're going to do some education. I would expect there's some education as far as looking at the life cycle of a medical device and how you get it to market. That might not be the same. I'm curious about your approach and what the advantages, disadvantages, and what you look for are.
Yeah, so at Solas, most of us, all of us in some way have had our own companies. We are operator led, we say deeply engaged. You hear it from everyone, but we don't want to just write checks. We want to roll up our sleeves, get in there. I travel with the companies that I'm on the board with. I help them fundraise, act as another person, because we're early stage investors. So a lot of times we're some of the first institutional capital, and we really want to help guide our companies through these regulatory, clinical, commercial strategies. And so we try to add value to our companies the best we can. Most of the time, we're also leading our term sheets. So we like to really work with the founders and the management team to figure out, what can we clean up? What can we do? What can we bring? Who can we bring to the table to really set your company up for success, not only with this round, but future rounds and beyond.
I'm curious, I just want to dig in just a little bit deeper there. When you come, especially since you're the first, oftentimes with those being the first on the term sheet, it seems like I hear more and more people talking about how there's less venture capital out there, true venture, and it seems to be all growth, especially in previous years when people are kind of like, they're veering away, there seems to be a constriction in the market. Curious your perspective on that and what the difference is.
Yeah, so I mean, you touched on a big reason why there's constriction in the market and capital kind of gets less available and therefore less risky. And the earlier stage stuff is riskier. And a lot of the natural progression of a venture capital firm is to grow their own war chest, their own assets under management, their own size of their funds. And the bigger you get, I want to say less risky you get, right? It gets easier the later stage you go, because you're able to say, oh, you've done a phase 1 trial, or now you've done your first in man, and so there's a lot less risk on the table. And I think venture capitalists just naturally progress to these larger rounds and these larger amounts of funds because they view that as success. And then they take less and less risks as they mature. And so I think people have a confirmation bias of the funds that have persisted the longest have grown to a size where they end up in growth capital. I do think there are some early stage investors like ourselves out there. They're just haven't built the brand, so they're not right in front of you, and you gotta find the right people.
I can see it being a different talent, building a company, well, from a company standpoint or a fund standpoint. I look at it, really the way you build something and the way you maintain it is two slightly different, I guess, muscles.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We rarely do commercial stage companies just because we believe that takes an entirely different skill set. And the same thing kind of happens with the management team, right? There's a management team that builds, and a lot of times you can kind of pass that off to a management team that commercializes and scales. It's natural progression.
Well, I'm curious.
Success.
In the audience, I should have put a poll up. Let's do. I'll do that while you talk. Maybe I'll put a poll together. But I'm curious who is starting a company right now, who's looking for investment. Are there people in the audience who are looking for investment capital? And Zachary's looking for it. Okay, well, feel free to put those in the Q&A. Just say, if we can always pass things on. But what I'm curious is, you mentioned that conversation early on with it's a little bit riskier for early stage companies. What can companies do to show that they're less risky of an investment, especially for a first time investor or the first one on their term sheet? are there things, I could see two answers to this. One being, I'm going to present myself in this way, but then the other is, what do you actually do to be less risky? So I don't know, however you want to answer.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, first off, anyone in the audience who is looking for capital, wants to reach out, Solas BioVentures, look us up on LinkedIn, add myself or any of my colleagues, whether it's David Adair, Travis Manasco, Isaiah Reeves. We're a great team and would love to dive in. It's my favorite part of the job is talking with these entrepreneurs just like yourselves. And it's a passion of ours. So yeah, please reach out. That's probably the best way to do it. Our emails stay pretty full. But what you can do to de-risk is, prepare as much as you can. We really look at the management team as some of these higher things. We have this back of the napkin thing. I think I've talked to you about before, and it's a classic Solas kind of mantra. We bring it up in a lot of our conversations, and it's the dote, goat, float, and moat. Right? When an early stage company comes to us, one of the first things we kind of look at is does this drug or device offer therapeutic efficacy? That's the dote, and that is the science. It's almost one of the easier ones to kind of de-risk and look at. It's objective. You can say, here's my hypothesis, here's my thesis, here's my tech, here's the market, and here's what, here's how we're going to change patient care. So does it help people? It's patient first, patient centered. How does this offer therapeutic efficacy through your idea? And then the second, arguably the most important, is the goat. So it's the greatest of all time, or is it the four-legged furry kind? The management team is by far one of the most important things. We kind of have to click.
You're being a little bit more polite than when you and I were at breakfast and you were telling me about this several years ago. You said, is the CEO the greatest of all time, or is he a four-legged animal? So I don't know if but I obviously expanded to the management team, but don't mean to interrupt. Go on.
Well, yeah, maybe that's my development too, is that it's more than the CEO. The CEO is definitely leading these charges. They're smaller teams when we're getting involved. So CEO is a lot of it, is most of it.
Sorry to interrupt again. Patricia actually asked a good question. What makes that good management team, or what's the criteria you look for?
Yeah. The standard answer to that one would always be the biggest indication of future success is past success. So like your experience, what have you done? Why are you the right person for this job, this team? What uniquely about you sets you up for success in this company? Do you have prior experience in this field? Have you run a company like this before? You've been there, done that successfully. Maybe you were the number 2 in a company that successfully did it, and now you want to be the CEO. That's one of the biggest answers. Secondarily, though, we always go out and meet any company we invest in. The people are the most important part. So we want to sit down. Maybe it's just us being Southern. We want to break bread with whoever we're about to invest in. And it's a very telling dinner, right? We'll sit down and we'll just notice how do you react to something going wrong in your meal, or how do you treat the wait staff? Are you generally a good person? We'll walk through your facilities and we'll notice how do the employees react when you enter the room? Are they heads down and like, oh no, I need to work? Or are you having a good culture and relationship with everyone around? It's just those small things, showing emotional intelligence to get you to the next level are huge indicators and red flags, green flags for us to look at, because this is not going to be a linear up success path. It's just not. It's a roller coaster. It's going to be ups and downs. And when things are down, are you going to throw your colleagues or your investors or your board under the bus and just blame other people? Or are you going to, have the forethought to say, this is what's going on. This is how we're handling it. This is how we move forward and work together with everyone. So
Awesome. Yeah,
That
that makes
makes a
sense.
good management team.
I really like the idea of actually sitting down and breaking bread, to use your terminology, and evaluating how it's a much more, we let our guard down during mealtime. And I think
Yeah.
just when I'm at conferences, that's when I like to talk to people. Breakfast and lunch, those are the two times when I just like to hang out with people. So I think that's
Yeah, I
really
think you eat and your parasympathetics just have to kick in. You're no longer you're relaxed. I think there's some science to it.
yeah. We'll come up with some studies here. So Evelina actually asked a question I thought was good, and I'm not trying to be preferential towards my Tennessee people, but what does it look like working with faculty and university patents? What do VCs look for if faculty are interested in licensing or starting their own business? And I can put that on the screen if you're interested.
Yeah.
Reading it yourself.
Ooh, fancy, cool. Man, thumbs up. Yeah, happy to talk through that. So as I was going through the dote, goat, float, moat, the third thing was the float, and that economics. It has to just float on its own. Has to make sense. You have to have good margin, good reimbursement, good good price. I would love to help advise all these companies, but I also have to keep helping companies by making money. So it is an important factor. And then to get to the question at hand, the last thing that we look at is the moat, the guard around the castle here. And most of the time, almost all the time in biotech and MedTech, it's your patents, your patent life. So when we're working with the university or tech transfer offices or just any company really for
Did I lose him? Oh, well, you guys are stuck with me for just a minute until he comes back, but I'm just going to mention there were a few questions about regulatory risk, and that's something I'm curious about as well. So I'm going to ask him about clinical risk, regulatory pathway, and market risk in just a moment. In the meantime, I'll kill just a minute to give him a chance to come back. Are there any other companies out there who are looking for investment? And I'll also be curious if there are any investors in the audience who are looking to connect to make deals, because this is more than just a presentation. At least I hope it is. I always look at these as opportunities for those in the Greenlight Guru audience to get together and learn from other attendees as well. So I see, I'm just looking in the comments here a little bit. Lewis Claus is looking for investors and planners. Nigel is looking, they have Series A1 and Class 2B, a little bit later stage. Jeff Hutchins, any others? And also feel free to put additional questions in the Q&A. One other thing I'll mention about the Q&A, because we don't always remember to do this, is in the Q&A, even if you don't have a specific question, feel free to jump back over there and upvote any other questions. That way we can make sure we're asking the most relevant questions to Josh. Hey, Josh, welcome back.
Hey, sorry about that. I don't know what technically happened there, but I'm switched to my phone just to recover as quickly as I could. So you can hear me and see me.
Still sounds pretty good. I'm impressed. That's great.
All right, good.
Yeah, no worries. So I interrupted you. I can't believe that you came back to the float. So we're on moat now, I think.
Right. Trying to wrap that up. Brought it back around best I could. And the moat, the IP. Let me make sure I'm answering the question specifically. But for IP, it's almost the last thing we do. No, it definitely is one of the last things we kind of look at. I mean, we're looking at it as we go, but I'm no IP lawyer. We don't really have a strong IP group here. We'll kind of look at it and be like, do a search and kind of think through it. But once we are comfortable with all the other things, we will do a formal patent. Like we'll hire an IP attorney and do a formal patent review. And that's kind of costly. It's kind of why we save it for the last thing. And normally we ask our IP guys to give us kind of a scale. We'll say like 1 to 10, how investable is this? How defensible is this? And if they're in the 7 to 10 range, that's normally pretty investable. And then anything below, we kind of have to take a step back and talk through that. Maybe maybe look to get a freedom to operate or something to really make sure that someone with more money, more time doesn't come and just knock you off the road here. So, that's how we approach IP right now.
Okay. And I want to get into regulatory risk in a moment. Actually, let's just go ahead and do that. How do you evaluate clinical risk, regulatory pathway, or market risk from a CPT code standpoint, or do you get into that level of detail? How do you evaluate regulatory risk?
Yeah, we're normally pretty early stage, and a lot of that stuff is changing in real time right now. But you can de-risk clinical and regulatory with the right advisors and the right study to design. For a clinical, we're really looking hard at that study design, endpoints, what you're trying to achieve and trying to prove. Working directly with the FDA, getting some feedback on it. Those are ways to de-risk it. And then ultimately, you can really de-risk it by finding the right advisors, people who are on those CPT panels or those Category 1 panels, who have gotten ideas through before. I'm thinking specifically in urology. There's a really famous guy, Dr. Dan, who has just done a great job with several companies and reimbursement. And if we see him as one of your advisors, we're kind of like, okay, I trust his statement. There's some key opinion leaders in each of these categories that if you can bring them to the table, have their kind of seal of approval, it can go along in de-risking, not only de-risking it from a funding standpoint and us at VCs, but from a market adoption standpoint. What are other clinicians and other decision makers, who are they following and trusting in their individual fields? Oh, you're muted. See you talking.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, rookie mistake.
Classic.
It's pre-2020 now in my mind. I'm actually an advisor on one medical device company, and I thought it was kind of a random. I've had a couple people come to me and ask for that case. Only one that we've actually formalized that agreement. But it's interesting to me when when that conversation comes up, because I'm not as familiar from your side. How do you, or it sounds like you are a proponent for that sort of thing from a regulatory advisor on the board or a quality advisor on the board. Maybe if you look at that whole board of advisors, how do you assess that besides just knowing the person or looking at their credentials? Is there certain, I guess, areas of knowledge that you expect to see there? And on the flip side of that, I'm curious about when you look at how they're being compensated, whether through equity or honorariums at certain milestones, et cetera. Are there certain things that you see as more positive or negative when it comes to those things? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think there's two questions in there, maybe. How do we evaluate?
Let's start with the who to have on your advisory board.
Who to have on your advisory board, right? Well, this is a small world and a smaller industry. It would be hard pressed not to have, someone with a good CV that doesn't have a direct connection to someone else that we know. And so it's just that, classic diligence check of if you've worked with this person before, I trust your opinion. I've worked with you. What do you think of them? Your reputation goes a long way. Right.
Well, let me formalize that.
Reputation's everything.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off. Let me nuance my question a little bit more. So less about the qualifications of the person, more of the vertical that they're in. Are there certain verticals of knowledge? And when I think of verticals in MedTech, I think of like regulatory, quality, maybe even distribution and reimbursement. You mentioned reimbursement. Are there certain ones that, of course, I guess it depends on the level, depth of knowledge of the C-suite, or yeah.
Okay. it depends on the depth of knowledge you have in the C-suite. It's true, but also depends on the stage of the company where you're at.
Okay.
Early stage is a little more engineering, design, verification studies, and the later you go, the more you need that reimbursement strategy. And there are great CROs that can fill these gaps for a team. The C-suite and the management team we like to see is kind of like the best I can think of is like a Navy SEAL team, right? And on the SEAL team, you'll have expertise. You have one guy who really knows this pillar, this expertise, but he's more than that. He knows, he's second in clinical and regulatory. He's third is his expertise in the engineering, and there's just multidisciplinary intersection between the team where they can really help each other out. That's something great to see. Is something we kind of look for is like diversity of thought in that way in building a great team.
Yeah. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. But I guess if you want to answer that question, I'm getting click happy over here.
Sure. Patent team assess freedom to operate. So on our skill sets, our patents, like I said, we always bring in a patent attorney, and we look for someone who's done work in that field so that they know how to assess. There's an actual designation you can get from lawyers called an FTO, a freedom to operate. And it's a formal like stamp of approval from that law firm saying, I believe, I'm signing off our law firm's name to say that you have the freedom to run with your company. They're pretty expensive, but if you have questions in your IP, then it can be beneficial and can really, we were talking about ways to de-risk, and that's one of the bigger ones too.
Yeah. If we kind of go back a little bit earlier in the conversation, we were talking about that you mentioned good and bad study design and ways of de-risking a company, or maybe not de-risking, but raising your confidence level in the company. Are there certain specifics about that study that you see as good versus bad, and how do you determine that?
Yeah, that's I've gotten into companies where we've set up a clinical design, and it turned out the restriction criteria was just too tight, and so it was almost too hard to recruit patients because we just couldn't find the right patient. So bringing in physicians in that field who are going to be doing the work can really add value on whether or not you can even recruit to get this trial done, right? Because it takes time, and time takes money, and we can have this great idea for a product, but if we can't prove that it's safe and it works, then we're not gonna go far. So it's a delicate balance between, you have to make sure that your exclusion criteria isn't too wide where you're accepting people that could throw off your data, but you want the right patients, but you don't want it so tight that it doesn't fit. And so it's more of an art than a direct science in a lot of this, right? It's the practice of medicine. It's what are the right patients? Are we meeting the right endpoints?
Yeah, is that something that someone on your team evaluates that study, or they look at all the details, or you have somebody?
It's part of our diligence. When we go into, depending on the stage of the company, when we go into it, a lot of times we'll be in the data room, some of the protocols that you have. And you can also sit down with the FDA and say, does this make sense, to you guys? You can have them sign off on a lot of these ideas that you have.
So a pre-sub submission or conversations with the FDA sounds like that is a confidence booster.
Oh yeah, definitely. Can get a letter from them saying, agreed. Then we're like, okay, that's something we look for in the diligence room too.
Yeah, we like your product code, et cetera, for your predicate, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit too much, and apologies for that. I don't mean to do this, but going back to the advisor, just because I see Jim's question in the
Sure,
in
yeah.
the chat there. What's a typical option size as compensation for a key advisor, or is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, we pulled data from a database called Philander to kind of reference off of.
Okay.
Yeah, they do compensation data and kind of they do a poll and have people reply back a survey, and then they report those surveys. And there's some specific to med devices, and there's some that are specific from a range. We'll refer to that for a lot of our compensation data.
Okay.
But you know, if the question was, for a key advisor, if this is, someone who sits on your board and is the main guy on board here, it can get as high as 1%, but normally, somewhere in that like 0.1 to 1%, depending on how far you guys are, how key is this individual to you. You don't want to cheap out, but you want them incentivized to do work for your company. And if a lot of times you don't have the capital to do that, you can make that up with some equity grants.
On that note, if we just go one level deeper, because or not deeper, but necessarily maybe an additional to it. I have some companies come to me. Well, it's maybe a stretch to call them a company, a physician who has an idea, maybe even a patent. They have a certain amount of money invested. Yeah. And they're looking for a CEO. They just want a CEO to take over the company and run with it. And they say, oh, how much equity do I give them? Or what do I pay a CEO? I don't know if you have some data on that, but I don't know if you could give some criteria or some way of establishing that number.
Yeah, I hate throwing numbers out there and then people hold it to me later is kind of my biggest reason I'm like slowing down here. But we can see CEOs, upwards of 5% on your equity grants for being the CEO. Again, this number is 3 to 5%, early stage, later stage, how much they grow. But typically when we put together a term sheet, we'll also put together, carve out for the management team a specific option pool. An option pool is anywhere, let's just say 15% around that amount. And out of that 15%, you want to divvy that percentage up amongst your entire management team to properly incentivize key advisors, anyone, good employees, your C-suite. That number is highly variable though. So
yeah.
Happy to talk one-on-one on a case basis with people, but generally, a CEO close to 5%.
Well, it looks like there's a lot of early stage companies in the audience who are looking for investment. So I guess feel free to reach out. And I don't want to flood your inbox necessarily, but if feel free to put those questions in the. One other thing I'll mention to those listening, if you want to put all the questions that you have, we're not going to get to all of them. I can't get to all the ones that we currently have, but what we'll do is I can pass those on to Josh. If he's willing and able to look at them, at his leisure, maybe we can get some of those answered. And maybe we can even work together and come up with some articles or a white paper.
Well, if there's a way to reach back after this, I'll sit down and answer all these questions.
Sure.
To the best of my knowledge.
Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. I'm curious about something, and that is, what are some of the top reasons you turned down companies? I can see it. I could pontificate about ideas. It's just not feasible in the industry or whatever. But you already mentioned that sometimes it's too early to really tell what CPT code they're going to use, what predicate, whatever. So what are the things that you look for as an early stage investor and say, these are the things that I turned down for these reasons?
I mean, there's never a fast yes. So the second best thing we can tell you as a VC is a fast no. Yeah. And the reasons behind it, right? Number one thing we can tell you is, yes, here's money, but it's not going to be quick. We're going to slowly get to that conclusion. So a fast no can have a lot of reasons behind it. Maybe it's just not something we feel we can add value to. One of the bigger reasons is kind of the lollipop eyes of a CEO or a founder who thinks this idea is worth $1 billion and is going to use this idea to buy an island and retire in a few years. Just some unrealistic goals and ideas. Is one of the bigger reasons we run into, right? Because we'll get down to term sheet negotiations, explain our case, and just can't get to an agreeable number. That's a reason that it gets further and then turns into a no. Sometimes it's the IP. It's not just defensible. Since we talked about that, that's a reason for a no. Sometimes it's not in a good fit for Solas. Maybe the timing's off, right? Maybe we're between funds, or we're in the later stage of our fund, or we're in the early part of our fund, and we're just pressured into looking at different stage companies. Maybe you have a great company that we would have invested in a few years ago, but now our incentives have just changed. So it's nothing to do with you and everything to do with us. Sometimes we say, I'd say the number one reason we say no is just out of our scope, not in our thesis. There's just a lot of ideas that come by that we don't do, like orthopedic and spine right now. It's just not in our expertise of here at Solas. We feel like this is a different strategy than what we have, what we know. A lot of ideas are commercialization stage. That's not something. We're still early stage investors, not really like growth capital. So we look for life-saving, ground-changing ideas. We don't do class 1 devices. We really want class 3, if not class 2. We want those heavier, high risk. We feel like we can really manage regulatory risk well here, and it's served us well.
What about de novo?
De novo is great too. Yeah, we'd love to take a look.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just say no because we don't feel like the team behind it has the right skill set, or it's just not the right people.
You mentioned a couple things in there that I think is interesting, particularly the higher risk. I guess that ties back to the moat. When you're the dotes, floats, moats, goats, the moat of having a higher risk or a class 3 device would make sense as far as something that would that be accurate way to kind of classify that section?
Say that again. Is it a what? Where does it fall?
Yeah, having a class 3 medical device, it gives you a little bit more of a moat than
Definitely
a class 1. Higher
that's
barrier to entry.
Higher barrier, exactly. There becomes a disconnect in the market when less people can do it. There's just it's an arbitrage opportunity, and you get paid for that. So we like to take advantage of those.
So you kind of mentioned what you don't do. This specific firm, Solas, doesn't. Right now you're not pursuing this, and at different stages, you're going to be looking for the growth early stage. Are there ways that? I love that you want to get to a fast no, but sometimes I guess when maybe a CEO is trying to raise funds, is there any way he can get to that fast no just by looking at that firm? Or I suppose there's probably theses on your website and so on.
Yeah. A lot of venture groups will post their portfolio, right? We want to be cheerleaders and advocates for all the companies we go into. And so if you look at their portfolio and you say, here's some trends I'm noticing, here's what they're investing in, look at their most recent funds or successful companies, that a lot of times will tell you, they've been there, done that, right? They've likely sat on the board or seen this company go from their Series A, to their M&A or their IPO. And, you want, there's a tendency a lot of the times for CEOs or management teams to really just want the dollar, just get the investment. But I would definitely encourage you to look at who's the right person to take the dollars from, because if if you're pitching, you don't want to waste your time. So you don't want to pitch to someone, a random VC who doesn't even know medicine, doesn't do any medical devices, doesn't do any therapeutics, or nothing even adjacent to it. They're not going to, that dollar's just not going to add more than a dollar. It's going to create probably more headache than help in the long run, because they just won't understand. They'll be pushing you for, why don't I have my return on investment yet? And you're like, well, these take time. Where's the revenue? Oh, we're not there yet. There's just you really have to have more sophisticated dollars. So take a look at their website, take all you can from it, look at their portfolio. Have they done medical investing in the past? Have they done investing in your space? See if they're invested in competitors. Maybe you don't want to pitch them some of your confidential or non-confidential information if they're already invested in the competing product. Mm-hmm. So do your own due diligence beforehand, and it'll save you a lot of time and money.
I've heard other things as far as don't bother sending an NDA. It just do you look at it? Is that something that matters or not?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had in the 7-8 years that I've been doing this now, I've never run into an NDA problem where someone challenges it or anything. So I don't know how, and I've heard they're not too defensible. So I think you'll do better by doing your diligence up front. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I'm looking to make investment into your company. I'm looking to buy a piece and be a part of your company. And I need a level of trust. And if you're holding back on me and we can't speak candidly, or you don't trust me enough, and you're like, I need to sign an NDA before I even tell you high level about my project, you should have the IP kind of down, or you should have a level of trust with someone you're trying to sell a piece of your company to have a candid enough conversation. I don't want you to tell me every little detail and the secret sauce and the reason behind it, but we need to at least have a front end non-confidential conversation that's genuine and can get my attention enough to be on your team. So it's a balance. I wouldn't right off the bat request an NDA before we even talk, because I have to sign a lot of NDAs. But I do it before you ask for data room. That's kind of a natural inflection point to say, hey, we've had some great conversations. I want to take it to the next level. It's not a no. So let's sign an NDA and get into a data room and really get into the weeds of this company. So that's when I would.
You used a phrase that I really like, and that is, I'm going to buy a piece of your company, or that's what I'm looking for. And I don't know that that's always what people are thinking, that I'm selling a piece of my company. And maybe I could be wrong about this, but I'm curious if you have any suggestions on mindset shifts on how to look at those things. Yeah, I'll start there.
Yeah, that's a classic, Shark Tank kind of what we do at the end of the day. If you look up Founder's Dilemma, it's a classic thing of you can own 100% of your company and it can be worth as much as you think it's worth, or you can sell half your company and we can get some working capital to grow it to a larger piece. And you might, at the end of the day, Series D, only own, as a founder, get down into the tens percentages, and but that dollar amount is worth a lot more than when you originally started. So it's a balance of getting there, getting it done. And personally, I have seen some founders run into that problem of, I don't want to give up too much of my company. That's I feel like my product is worth more. The term sheet is not fair. And at least us at Solas, it's a roller coaster, and you're going to go through some ups and downs. And sometimes those downs, we're right there with you a lot of times, the early stage capital. Sometimes you have to make those hard decisions to let go a lot of your company just to get it to that next stage. And we always advocate, at the end of the day, whether it's a bonus or increase in the option pool. We want everyone to be properly incentivized and aligned for success of this company. So I think people are a little too sensitive on their prices, and that ends up hurting their company, as opposed to let's get the right capital in and let's get to the next step and let's get this product into patients and make a difference. And then there's no sin in also making some money.
I think I'm just trying to work through, why would somebody say, well, that's too much of my company. I mean, obviously there's an emotional component of that, but I also think there's a lack of knowledge and knowing where to get that knowledge. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm curious where you have your places you go to find, hey, this is what X amount of the company should be worth at this stage with this level of expertise and this level of patent protection, et cetera. Where could a founder go to get that information to really make an informed decision? You know what? Realistically, I'm at the end of the day, I'm going to own X amount, X percent. If I follow the industry guidelines, like as a CEO, I shouldn't expect $1 million paycheck for an early stage company. There's places to go to look, see what kind of salary ranges you should truly expect. But where do they go to find the information about how much equity to give away? Have a one-on-one conversation?
Yeah. I mean, it is a case-by-case basis. And it is an emotional question. Business, a lot of times shouldn't be emotional, but it is, it is an emotional thing. It's your baby, your idea you've probably worked on for years, and it's hard to give that up. It's hard to say that this baby is ugly, or come to that realization, or when your company grows up, you have to give it more and more responsibility on its own and kind of let it go, and that's just hard for some people. As far as this is a fluid industry. There's no industry. There's no like XYZ. This is what's fair. This is what isn't. Yeah. It is a dynamic market dependent on macro events, industry events, field specific, whether it's, urology or cardiology or neurology. They each ebb and flow and command different prices and different endpoints. We sit down and have that conversation with founders and management teams and explain our rationale and try to educate. But surrounding yourself with good advisors, looking towards people who've been there and done that and what they've experienced. People are generally willing to help out, especially, an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, or founder to a founder, or clinician to a clinician. Find people who have done that and gain from their experience. It's one of the biggest advantages we have as humans is to lean on each other and stand on the shoulders of giants and find those giants and get their advice. Yeah.
I love Nicholas in the comments say, connect with founders who've done it before. And I think that's a great suggestion. One thing that I do want to ask about, because this was asked, and I think this is important to think about, is the type of money. We've talked about that SaaS B2B fund that might not know the regulatory hurdles that they're going to have to go through. So you're going to have to go through a lot of education. What about other types of money? Primarily, we're talking about venture capital. What's the benefit of venture capital versus going through other, maybe it's different stages, you tell me, but family office, angel investing, et cetera. What are some times that you should look at different types of money from different places?
Yeah. Early on your journey, if you have just an idea, you want to look towards angel capital. That's some of the earliest, highest risks kind of funds. A lot of times it's friends or family, but there's also angel groups out there who are just looking to be that literal first check. I mentioned earlier that we're a lot of times the first institutional check, but we're not necessarily the very first check. There's angels out there.
And And if there's anyone out there in the audience who does need a first check for your, if you're especially in the Nordic region, I know somebody who's interested in that who does the angel fund. You just made me think of him. But yeah, go on.
There's a lot of high net worth individuals who have made their money and were an entrepreneur at one point, and they love to give back to the community, or maybe it's a rich uncle, or it's a grant from your university, or a lot of times maybe not so much now, but there's federal grants. There can be like maybe Parkinson's idea. You can go to the foundation money. There's just a whole host of different pools of money and capital for each stage of your company, and finding out what's the right partnering group, corporate venture capitalists as you grow, anything you can do to get to that next stage. Second mortgage on your house, there's
I heard one person say, I won't invest till they've invested $500,000 of their own. I don't know. It's just I don't know how.
I get that, because you want some alignment, you want some skin in the game. But on the other hand, that's just not feasible for everyone. Someone who has 10 grand in their company, and who just doesn't have much, that can be a lot to them. As a
percentage of net worth, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Percentage of net worth is what I personally like to look at, because just 500,000 right off the bat is it's not doable for most of the world. So.
What about family office? Are there any advantages or disadvantages going this way or that way there?
Well, yeah, there's definitely some advantages. Family offices a lot of times can be mission driven in our industry. We're the original impact investment, right? So if you have, I've met family offices who are just looking to invest into pediatric innovation. So if you have an idea that's pediatric, you want to, talk to those family offices. They can be range in sophistication, just like venture capitalists. Honestly, they can range from kind of dumb dollars to very strict and very helpful groups. It's a mixed bag. So,
yeah. Couple rapid fire questions. I know, so I think, let me check my calendar, make sure we did schedule 90 minutes. I hate to make you talk for that long, so I'm not going to make you, but I do want to kind of take advantage of the time we have for a little bit longer.
I'm here for it.
One of the things I wanted to ask about are the industry events at the FDA, because oftentimes our industry or our audience at Greenlight Grew is pretty tied into the quality and the regulatory side of things. What do you, have you seen anything that's detracting from your willingness? Well, have things at the FDA made you not want to invest in, say, a 510K, for example, due to the change in reviewers, cutting staff earlier, or anything like that? Any industry things that are changing your mind about certain things?
There's a lot of things going on. The only thing I can say with 100% certainty at the FDA is that I can't say anything with 100% certainty about the FDA.
That is wow, I'm going to quote you on that one.
You just have to have your ducks in a row. Don't ask too many questions, and just answer their questions as scientifically as you can. Is there anything that's detracting us as Mr. Cash? Maybe some fringe people who aren't specifically, like, our thesis is medical devices and pharmaceuticals. So we know that that's a risk. We're going into it. So we look at the risk. We've kind of shied away a little bit from vaccines recently, but it doesn't mean that we don't still want to invest in those spaces. The fringe venture, though, I definitely think it has kind of pushed them away from this idea, right? There were markets like certainty and like to know what's going on. So I think there is a lot of sideline money right now saying, okay, what is this administration and the FDA? How does this settle out? What are some of the new changes, positive or negative? They just want to know at the end of the day what the path is going to be or what the changes are going to be. So I do think it is negatively affecting the industry, but I think in the long run, science will win out. and we will the pendulum will swing the other way eventually.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Are there any technologies or trends in MedTech that you're really excited about right now?
I personally lead up the AI and data collection and kind of the tech med forward. So devices are becoming more and more software enabled. And that's kind of what I really enjoy digging into and getting into, parsing out what is just some algorithms and claiming AI and some really deep understanding connected to our medical databases and how can we really leverage up this big data, and now we can crunch it and get to some actionable items here. I love looking at that. We have 3 different AI powered companies at Solas, and I've done a lot of work with, and I'm really excited about where that industry is going.
I want to ask you I want to run a theory by you and get your take on it then, if that's the case with your AI experience. So I've had companies pitch me, and they pitch me from a different perspective. I'm not investing in companies, but they're interested in what do you think? There's some market viability in these different aspects from my experience with quality and regulatory? And some companies are coming with their AI tool and saying, look, we can do your, let's just say, we can automate a report for you of some sort. So it goes through and looks at your data and generates this report. And I look at that and I think to myself, okay, this is cool. This is great. This is making where I don't have to write a report. But there's an expiration date on reports in general, especially if the FDA is coming up with an AI tool that's going to potentially use an AI to review your data. Why would you not have an AI to just talk to that AI on the same level? It's that I feel like we're in this MedTech 2.0 where we're trying to bolt on AI. And there's this other MedTech 3.0 that's completely different and going to change the way we think. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah. Parsing out, as you put it, that 2.0 versus 3.0 is a fun part of my job right now. It's like, what are some ideas that are just trying to tack it on versus fully integrated and really taking advantage of the opportunity at hand here. I enjoy it. I think it's going to be a big part of the future. It's part of my thesis here that I've developed out. Finding it can really help us with these subjective data points in the past and really bring some objectivity and linking some reasons why. We've had some really cool stuff fall out from our companies that just is mind blowing.
Just saw Evelina in the chat talk about Launch Tennessee is hosting in Nashville. Oh, in September. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to try to attend to that. But anyway, that's different. So I do want to ask you one other question and follow up on that. Can you share any examples where maybe that you can see a company that is that AI forward, or I like 3.0, I don't know, whatever terminology is going to stick here, where that is a future forward company versus just bolting it on. For example, I like to use the example of AI being kind of, we probably all heard this, AI kind of being like electricity. So if instead of taking 2 prongs and I'm going to, fry a piece of toast this way, you actually make a toaster and it's fully integrated. No, it's not an electric toaster, it's just a toaster. And do you have any examples in the medical device world where that's happened?
Of course.
And actually, go ahead.
I'd love to brag on our companies for a bit too. Yeah,
let's hear it.
Well, let's
anything you're allowed to say. I recognize.
What can I say, right?
Yeah.
While being so respectful to the companies, we have 2 great AI companies. I'm on the board for IO Urology, and it is the front door for urology. It's a handheld device that you void through, and it'll tell you your flow rate, volume, time, frequency, just about 20,000 data points on your void. And then we can use this data to tell all sorts of things. It's crazy, right? I can think theoretically of all these metrics and all these points. It's like, oh yeah, if you could link that to, acceleration and flow rates and all these points. But when we got down to it and we did some AI stuff and we linked it to some of the patient charts, it would say things like, recommend for neurological evaluation, because turns out the bladder can have essential tremors before the rest of the body does. And the urinary tract, the lower urinary tract, can pick up on that. And it's just something I would have never linked Parkinson's to urinary symptoms. But a computer or our AI system can really find these connections and these points that are fringe thoughts and ideas. Another one that I love to talk about too, that I help out with, is called Vector Medical. And they're able to take 12 lead EKGs and map your cardiac arrhythmias. So previously that had to be done, catheter based, stick something up into your heart and really get the electrical signal of the heart and map out. But now we can use our AI to say, hey, this 12 lead EKG is showing arrhythmias in this region of the heart, and give you a virtual map of that without having to go to a cath lab. I'm in love with both of these companies. They both have kind of different AI applications and systems to them. They bring objectivity to a previously subjective field, or they make the clinical practice just an easier and more fluid step to help patients. So these are just some of the close companies. We have another one called Pathware that is pathology AI, right? It's your standard, we invested in this years ago before AI was really this big buzzword, and it's really just grown since. And what it can do is just take your pathology slides and tell you what the cells are, what's in it. And we're not necessarily saying this is what you have, right? We're not going to diagnose, but we're going to lead urologists to be able to scale easier, better, point them to where to look, because we believe, we can identify these cells quicker, and they can kind of just sit back at home and swipe, yes, that's cancerous, no, that's not, yes, this is that cell, no, it's not that cell, and just make the practice of medicine smoother.
Yeah, I love that. And I imagine, you may not have privy information to this, but I would imagine those companies who are building those AI tools have probably implemented AI in their own workflows as well. They're probably one of the best practices for the utilization of AI in their company. And so the reason I bring that up and mention it is a lot of people listening they're like, man, I'm not developing an AI tool. Maybe it's helpful to know, okay, are there ways you could implement AI in the future to make your tool a little bit better? But let's face it, a lot of companies aren't going to be able to aren't likely going to do that. Are there things that you think, man, this is the way a company is going to operate differently though in the future? Product agnostic, there are certain AI things, and maybe as an investor, do you care about that?
Honestly, it's not something we have looked at yet on our diligence checklist, but I might be adding that now. What are your applications of managerial or task specific AI for your company? That's a great one to add. But to be honest, it's still a new field. I think, ChatGPT is coming out with new tools every other month. It seems like it's getting more and more sophisticated. Here at Solas, we're playing with it with our own diligence and our own spreadsheets and our own internal reviews. But right now, to be honest, even I am still at a stage where I am playing with its efficacy. Yeah. We've put in policies in place where we have to have someone sign off on everything, right? We really don't want someone just to do these language models and then send it out. Right. You really got to check, because it doesn't get everything right. And I think it'll have a space, and it does have a space with most of us here in the team. We use it in several ways, whether it's writing an email or doing diligence quicker. Yeah. it's going to be part of the workflow, but I think it's still new enough that those tools are still being developed, and whether you use them, you will use them eventually, but whether or not you're using them right now to do it, I don't think it's going to be a requirement.
Yeah, I think we're still early too. That being said, I do think, well, I just saw a company recently in the news talking about how we've probably all heard how engineers may use AI to write certain code. And so people are trying to eliminate that. Well, another company is looking to the future and saying, hey, if this is the way it's going to be, let's embrace that in the interview. And we say, okay, here's an AI tool that you can use during the interview to write whatever code. And so feel free to use the AI tools that at your disposal, and let's see what your code looks like. And I thought, I mean, that's forward thinking, I think. And it's, yeah.
That is, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Luckily, I'm not
if,
using it every day. I've played with it, but it's
no, yeah. If anybody's out there has suggestions, I love learning more about these different things. I am insatiably curious. I recently learned that my mom did not actually think I was rebellious as a child. She thought I was way too curious, and so that was just an interesting revelation. I thought justification.
yeah.
Let me think. Are there any other questions? I mean, there's so many questions. We're gonna have to send this to you and see if you're able to plow through these. Maybe we'll come up with a working document or something.
Here for it.
I don't know if there's one thing I want to ask. I guess last thing, just are there any events you'll be at or recommend? Hey, this is a great networking event, because you already mentioned how important the network is. Any places you really recommend? Hey, if you're in an early stage, you should probably check out these different places.
Yeah. Regionally, there's I saw Launch Tennessee putting their stuff out there. 3686. I will unfortunately not be there this year because I will be at LSI.
Oh, that's the same week.
It's the same week.
Okay,
So
I'll be at LSI as well. So yeah, go ahead.
Good. We'll connect again. It takes going to a different country for us to see each other in person. But,
I know. Maybe. Where do you fly out of?
Atlanta.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll fly out of Atlanta. Maybe we can fly together. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Where else?
Yeah. So LSI has an event. It's in Dana Point, California, every year. We always show up to that, and we always do those 15-minute. Unfortunately, I only make it to a handful of the actual events, because here at Solas, we're really there to connect with entrepreneurs at those events, and we spend 80 to 90% of our time on those partnering, just talking to everyone who wants to talk to us and telling them, how to connect, what the next steps would be, or, free advice, take for what you paid for it. But that's what we do at those events all the time. We also go to JP Morgan. It's a pretty big industry one. I'm just kind of naming the higher level ones because I can't always commit to these closer.
Yeah.
Like Life Science Tennessee does a great conference, but I try to help out every year. But like 3686 is the same time as LSI, so we're prioritizing life science intelligence.
Do you go to MedTech conference by AdvaMed?
I have in the past. It's not on like our reoccurring one right now, but that's been one that we have some kind of presence, whether it's me or one of the partners. We try to go to as many as possible, but there's so many conferences out there that sometimes we're in the middle of a deal or head down or fundraising ourselves, and it's just depends on the cycle.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Where can people find you? I had somebody ask in the comments, how do we get in touch with Solas? So we'll put that in the email, but I guess feel free to mention for those listening on the podcast version, how can people find you and get in touch?
100% LinkedIn is probably our best way. Just reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, look up Solas BioVentures. I think that's the only real social media platform we use as a firm. We try to push out, whether it's our portfolio companies or our personal or events like this, we put out there. look to me or any of my colleagues, send an invite, send a message, and we will try to get back to you.
Okay. And if for any reason you struggle to find Josh's email, feel free to email me or anyone at Greenlight Guru, and we can forward that on as well. We'll be forwarding on the questions, and hopefully we get some kind of answers. But we're also working on an article with this, and we hope to work with Josh on that. So maybe we can weave a lot of this in. All right,
I'm
Josh.
here to help. So
yeah, really appreciate this. This is a really
boss.
fun conversation for me, and hopefully it's been valuable to the audience. And yeah, those of you who've been listening, you've been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast. We hope to see you next time, and until then, take care.
It's fun. Thank you for having me.
All right, and we'll just snap that for the podcast section. Guys, really appreciate you all hanging in there with us. Stefan, Christine, Melissa, Santiago. It's been really good. You guys asked a lot of good questions too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get backstage, and I guess I'll see you back there. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll reach out with those questions.